Now, is investing confusing? Is it really difficult to choose between what investments you should be putting your money into? Sometimes it's a bit like choosing between the air fryer, where you want crispier, healthier food, versus deep frying, that indulgence, really tasty food as well. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you about the difference between low risk investments like the air fryer versus some of those high risk investments like the deep fryer, knowing the difference between two and how to allocate your capital wisely for the best returns relative to the risks you take. So here goes. Well, so thanks for joining my video. I'm Premal Gohil. I'm a Chief Financial Officer for a fintech and YouTube educator, where I help people like you really understand complex financial concepts in a much more simple way using everyday household objects. So most recently, air fryers have been all the rage recently. I know my wife swears by them. Whether you're cooking vegetables or fries or you want meats or whatever it may be, they're a really good, healthy version of being able to get that kind of fried effect. And so an air fryer machine, and so you might have a timer on it with its tray. I want you to think of an air fryer really about giving you access to low risk investments, right? And on the flip side, you have the very trusted deep fryer. Again, I'm really sorry about my art. I know in previous videos, I've had some really funny comments from people saying, dude, you need to really figure out some drawing lessons because you cannot draw. Yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I'm working on it. As you can see, I'm not perfect, but call this the deep fryer. And I'm frying some fries. That is really what I'm gonna call your high risk investments. Right? Now, the difference between the two, the air fryer gives you that kind of healthy, but it's stable, low returning, you know, low volatility, doesn't really go up and down much type of investments. You're really not going to set the world alight with them. It's a safe place to kind of park your money. Whereas the deep fryer, those lovely fries that you want to eat, lots of grease, lots of oil, really yummy, but unfortunately very bad for you. Obviously not very healthy, tend to be much higher return, higher volatility. And so whilst they may go up and down a lot, actually, you know, you could really benefit from huge gains, but you know, much more risky. And if I think about the types of investments you may get in the air fryer, you have things like bonds, cash, you might do real estate in here depending on what type of real estate it is. Whereas in the deep fryer, we're talking about things like equities or stocks and things like crypto. Right, so those are the main differences between the air fryer and the deep fryer. So air fryer, think low risk, stable, never going to set the world alight, but very steady. The deep fryer, unhealthy but highly indulgent, really yummy, but high return, higher volatility, think equities, stocks, crypto. So every investor will have their own tolerance as to what they can accept. And that's really, the way to think about that is we all have our own recipes for different foods that we like and what we enjoy. So the question really is, well, where do I invest my money? How do I do it? Now, I always think a really good way is to have a mix of both. So the way to think about it is maybe one day you want a broccoli, lovely vegetables, air fried. And then another day you might fancy some fries, right? And the point being is that it's really important to have like a more balanced diet, where some days you're going to indulge and you're going to eat foods that maybe aren't so good for you in the deep fryer, but other days you're going to be having the more healthier food that's air fried. Your investments, think about very much the same way. Have a good mix between what's air fried, i.e. the low risk, low volatility, versus the deep fried, which is the high risk, higher volatility. And the reason for this is then you strike a much more balanced portfolio. And I'll give you a real life example. I had a friend of mine who really took this air fryer, deep fryer approach really to heart. And what he did was he had a really good amount of bonds, of cash, of investments that were much more air fryer, low risk. And then he had a proportion of stocks, equities, crypto that were more higher risk. The air fryer type investments were very steady, but they were never going to make him wealthy. They were just going to protect his capital and make sure he didn't lose his money. Whereas the deep fryer, whilst they're sometimes went down in down markets, in up markets, they really exploded and really added to his investment pot and made his wealth much bigger. So in summary, what I'm saying here is it's really important to have a mix of air fryer and deep fryer investments. The air fryer being the lower risk, lower volatility, stable, never going to set the world alight, but you're going to be much less likely to lose any money, versus the deep fryer where you want to put a small proportion of your investments there. It's much more indulgent, but it's much more higher risk, and yet the potential to really increase your wealth is much more increased. So I hope that's been a good video for explaining the difference between lower risk investments and higher risk investments using an air fryer and deep fryer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do please like or subscribe. It really helps us spread the message of my mission, which is to help explain complex financial concepts in a much more simple way to people. And until next time, thank you.